partial proof assume expectation of x power 4 x I power 4 is some eta x, okay, some finite number. Okay. Also without loss of generality, assume expectation of x is 0. Actually the reason I say there is no loss of generality is we can get it back. So if xi's have some non-zero, so they have finite mean, right, if they have finite fourth moment they have finite mean, you subtract the means if they have non-zero mean, right, you define xn tilde equal to xn minus expectation of x and then prove the result for xn tilde and then you have to go back to proving it for x. Okay. So this without loss of generality can be justified. Okay. There is no loss of generality in assuming that all these random variables are 0 mean. Okay. So what you have, so you have assumed finite fourth moments. So you have, so you will do this. Okay. I think so you will. Okay. So let's look at the probability of the fourth power. I think exceeding epsilon. Okay. And so this is less than expectation of correct Markov. Okay. Now I am going to complete, well let me write it this way, Sn of absolute Sn to the fourth over n to the fourth epsilon to the fourth. Now I am going to compute this guy. Okay. Absolute Sn to the fourth is same as Sn to the fourth. Oh, right, this is fine. Okay. So I just took the absolute value out because the fourth power, I mean it does not make a difference, right, because you are taking the fourth power anyway. So if you look at expectation of Sn to the 4, that will look like expectation of x1 plus dot 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 xn to the fourth. Okay. So now I am just going to expand this. So you will get n, so you will get the fourth powers of all the xi's and there will be n such terms, correct. So this will be equal to n times eta x, you will have n times eta x as the first x. So you will have x1 to the fourth plus x2 to the fourth plus so on, right, there will be n such terms, correct. Plus what else will you have? You will have terms that looks like x1 x2 cubed and so on, correct, or all possible pairs of xi xj cubed, correct, where I and j run over all indices, correct. Now what is the expectation of a term like that? What is the expectation of xi xj cubed? Say they are independent, so you can write it as expectation of xi times expectation of xj cubed, but expectation of xi is 0. So all these odd terms will go to 0, okay, all these xi xj cube terms will go to 0, okay. And what else remains? You will have terms that look like x1 squared x2 squared, right, xi squared xj squared you will have, right. How many of those do you have? So you will have, I believe you will have, so you can do n choose 2 of these, right, and then you will have to do 4 choose 2, right. So you will have something like 6 times n choose 2 so many terms of x1 squared times x2 squared, expectation of x1 squared x2 squared, correct. So, just you have 4 of these, right, write it out. So, you will have expectation of x 1 square times expectation of x 2 squared, which is nothing but sigma x to the 4th, right, and all other terms will be 0. Okay. Just verify this. Okay, I am not 100% sure about this. So, I think this is correct, but you will essentially you will get something that looks like n squared times sigma x to the 4th. Okay. This is just algebra, you just expand the whole thing out, and you are making use of the fact that xi's are 0 mean. So, the terms that look like x 2 x 3 cubed will go to 0 in expectation, correct. And this comes because you are taking so you are looking at terms like xj squared, xi squared, xj squared, and I and j you can pick in and choose 2 ways, isn't it? And there are 4 places where you can pick the i's and j's from, 2 out of 4, right, which is why you get 4 choose 2, which is 6. Okay. And then you have expectation of x 1 squared times expectation of x 2 squared, which is sigma x squared times sigma x squared, which is sigma x to the 4th. Okay. So, now you have, so this is good. So, expectation of, so if I go back here, okay, so let me put that back here, all right. So, this I will get, so I am going this here, okay. So, this will be equal to what? I have eta x over n cubed epsilon, right, plus 6 times n choose 2 is 3 n minus 1, right. So, let me just upper bound this as, actually let me just write 3 n squared over n to the 4 epsilon. See, 6 times n choose 2 I have upper bounded by 3 n square, correct. 6 times n choose 2 is nothing but 6 times n minus 1 over 2, which is 3 times n minus 1. I am upper bounding that by 3 n square. Okay. So, great. So, what do I have? So, I have that probability of Sn over n to the 4th exceeding epsilon is less than all that, right. So, I will get rid of this, n squared will cancel with n to the 4th to give you n squared epsilon, correct. So, what do you have? So, this implies that sum over n equals 1 through infinity probability of Sn over n to the 4th so if I sum from n to n equal 1 to infinity, what will I get? That will be less than, it will be less than infinity for all epsilon, because this is less than that, and if I sum this from n equal to 1 to infinity, I have a 1 over n cube term and I have a 1 over n squared term, they are both finite. As long as I do not have 1 over n, I am fine, right. So, this will be less than infinity. So, what does this imply? So, we have seen this, right, by from Borel-Cantelli lemma we saw if probability of xn minus x greater than epsilon, the summation is finite, then xn goes to x almost surely. This means that Sn over n to the 4th goes to 0 almost surely, from which you can show that Sn over n goes to 0 almost surely. Okay. So, this implies Sn over n to the 4th goes to 0 almost surely, from which you can argue that Sn over n goes to 0 almost surely. Okay, this is a very short proof of the strong law. You prove this for 0 mean, now you can put back the mean. You can take these xi's you can take as xi tilde, which is xi minus expectation of x, right, and then you can prove for non-zero mean also. Okay. Any questions on this?
X an hour and whole raised to 4 tends to 0, and then you can get the X an hour and tends to 0.
So from here, how do you conclude that Sn over n goes to 0 almost surely? So the set of all epsilons where, see, set of all omegas where Sn over n to the fourth goes to 0. For those omegas, Sn over n will have to go to 0. Right? So you are saying that the fourth power of a sequence is going to 0. Right? Which means the sequence has to go to 0.
1 by n whole raised to 4 goes to 0, but 1 by n
It does go to 0. Right?
Yes,
Okay. Actually, you know what? So I am going to keep this. Okay. So I was about to erase this, but I am going to use this. So I will erase this. So I am going to, if there are no questions on this, I will give you a another partial proof of the strong law of large numbers. This time I will only assume finite variance. So this assumes something very strong, right? You assume fourth moments are finite, which is a very strong assumption. Okay, now I will do for finite variance. So once you prove it for finite variance, then you have to, in order to generalize fully, you have to go through a truncation argument. Okay, you have to truncate these random variables at some big value b, and so the truncated random variable will have finite variance, right? And then you have to show that as b is very large, these truncated random variables and your original random variables are close, and then you will get your strong law. Okay. So partial proof 2. Assume now that sigma x squared is finite, and let expectation of x is equal to mu okay. So to begin, we assume xi's are IID non-negative random variables. So we will prove strong law for finite variance non-negative random variables. Okay. Yeah. So in that case, so we know that, so from, so you call this equation star, okay. From star we have, so I have a bound on the mean squared, right. So I am going to look for, so I am going to look at this guy, okay. Sn over n minus mu is my mean, by the way. I am going to look for this probability, okay. So this probability is less than, by Markov this is less than sigma x squared over n epsilon. Agreed? Correct? Why is this? So this is because this will be less than expectation of that squared over, it's epsilon squared. So just a minute. So I think there should be an epsilon squared here, or if I have Yeah. So I should probably have epsilon squared here, no? Should there be a square here? No? I think there should be a square here, no? So n, so see, all I am saying is I am skipping a step here. So this greater than epsilon is same as, yeah, so this squared exceeding that squared, right, which means by Markov this is less than expectation of this squared over n times, so the over, sorry, epsilon squared. So there should be a squared, correct, but I know that expectation of that object squared is sigma x squared over n. Okay, so agree with me on this. Okay, so all these squares can go away. Yeah, so this you will agree, right? This is basically just, actually come to think of it, this is just Chebyshev's inequality, right? This is x minus mu greater than epsilon is the less than or equal to the variance over epsilon squared, correct, and variance is sigma x squared over n, that is all. Okay. Yeah, correct. So this is 100% correct. Okay, so now this, from this, if you take limit n tending to infinity, you will get 0. Okay, but that will only help you prove convergence in probability, right? It does not give you convergence almost surely, correct. So you have to somehow jump from convergence in probability to convergence almost surely. See, jumping from convergence almost surely to convergence in probability is trivial, right? It always is true, but you know that there is a partial converse going from convergence in probability to convergence almost surely. You recall that? If you sum it, you will get something that is, so that guy is not going to be finite, that is not going to help you here, right? Find a subsequence, you find a subsequence. So what subsequence will you find now? So there always, see, when you have convergence in probability, there is always a subsequence, a deterministic subsequence that goes to the same limit almost surely, correct. Remember the theorem, and that subsequence is deterministic, it does not depend on omega, right. So I think I mentioned, see, you have these occasional epsilon excursions in this convergence in probability, but by choosing the subsequence you are able to avoid these excursions, right. So the nice thing is you can choose the subsequence irrespective of the realization. See, I mean, if your subsequence can depend on the realization, it is no big deal, right. I can avoid precisely those excursions, right, that is not surprising at all, but I can choose a subsequence which avoids deterministically beforehand, before even omega realizes, so that I do not have these epsilon excursions, and therefore I have convergence almost surely. So if you consider here, so what do you think should be the sequence? There should be a subsequence of this n. If you go like k squared, if nk, let nk equal to k squared. So the reason I am doing k squared is I want this to go to 0 faster now. Actually I do not need k square, I can even take k to the 1 plus delta, but this is fine. So I am not looking at S2 over 2, S3 over 3, S4 over 4 and so on, I am looking at for the perfect squares, right, k equal to n equal to some perfect square, I am looking at that sequence. Then what happens is probability of Snk over nk minus mu, if you just look at that, will be less than sigma x squared over nk epsilon squared, right, and nk is equal to k squared. So, that will be k squared epsilon squared. Okay. So, if I sum this over k now, so this is a subsequence nk, right, indexed by k. Now, if I sum this over k, I get something that is something finite, right, which means the sequence Snk indexed by k, Snk over nk indexed by k goes to 0, goes to mu almost surely, correct. So, if you have thus sum over k equal to 1 to infinity, probability of Snk over nk minus mu greater than epsilon is finite, because if you sum this over k equal to 1 to infinity, you get something finite, right, for all epsilon. This means S nk over nk goes to mu almost surely as k goes to infinity. Okay. So, this is not all that surprising, because if you know that Sn over n goes to mu in probability. So, there must be some subsequence Snk over nk which goes to 0, goes to mu almost surely by the theorem, right. The good thing is we have identified what that nk is, its k squared is enough, right. So, that is good. Now, can I actually, now that is not enough, right, I have to prove that Sn over n goes to mu almost surely. Now, that is where this assumption comes in. So, this non negative assumption is going to help us now. Okay. So, what happens if, so next if you consider, so you are looking at Sn over n, if k n is a perfect square, this helps you, right, whenever n is a perfect square those terms go to 0 almost surely, but what if n is not a perfect square, right. So, in that case you have to prove, so you have to look at so let us say if n is some 13 or something, look at the number which is the perfect square which is smaller and the next number which is bigger, next perfect square which is bigger. So, you can write this, isn't it, Sn will lie between, so since xi's are non negative, Sn can be bounded between S so let me write it like this, S k plus 1 squared and S k squared, where k squared is less than or equal to n is less than or equal to k plus 1 squared. So, if n is not a perfect square, you find the next smallest and the next biggest perfect squares. Okay. Well, maybe you should have that less than. Okay. You can always do that. And why is this true? Because your xi's are non negative. So, these si's can only increase, correct. So, this you will agree with. Now, ideally I want, so I want some sandwiching argument to go through, right. So, I am going to divide this by n, which is what I want, right. Now, what should I divide this by in order to preserve this inequality? So, okay, let me just divide all of this by n, that is definitely fine, right. So, I should write that as S k plus 1 squared over n, right. I am just dividing everything by n. Then I can write one more term. So, I can write this is less than or equal to S k squared over. So, I have to divide by something larger. So, I can do, I cannot do k squared, right, then this inequality will not hold, right. Then here I have to do a similar trick. So, I have S k plus 1 squared over, now what do I do? Instead of n I write, I cannot write k plus 1 squared. So, I write k squared, okay. So, you agree with that, right, this is just algebra. Now, I send n to infinity, okay. If I send n to infinity, k also goes to infinity, right. So, k goes to infinity, what happens to this term? See, I know that x k squared over k squared goes to mu almost surely, which means x k square over k plus 1 squared also goes to mu almost surely. You see why? Well, because it is again just simple algebra, right. So, send take n to infinity. So, then you will have, so as n tends to infinity, k will also go to infinity. So, limit k tends to infinity, S k squared over k plus 1 squared less than or equal to limit n tending to infinity S n over n is less than or equal to limit k tending to infinity S k plus 1 squared over k squared. So, I have a sandwiching argument coming up, right. So, this as k tends to infinity. So, this guy can be written as S k squared over k squared times k squared over k plus 1 squared, correct. So, limit k tending to infinity of that, correct. But as limit k tends to infinity, the almost sure limit of this is mu, and as k tends to infinity, that goes to 1, that deterministically goes to 1, right. So, the limit of this as k tends to infinity is almost surely equal to mu, right. So, this limit is almost surely equal to mu, correct, and similarly this is also almost surely equal to mu. So, therefore, this limit exists almost surely, see, right, because this limit is sandwiched between two objects which are almost surely converging to mu, right. So, this limit exists almost surely and that limit is equal to mu almost surely, right. So, that is the sandwich argument, okay. So, S n over n goes to 0 or goes to mu almost surely. We have assumed finite variance and we have also assumed non-negative random variables, right. So, to extend to possibly negative random variables with finite variance, write x I is equal to x I plus minus x I minus and proceed. Okay, so the same trick, write x is equal to x plus minus x minus, and so you can get rid of the non-negative assumption. Okay, so for finite variance random variables, we have more or less we have actually proved the strong law of large numbers. So, in order to remove this finite variance assumption as well, you have to, as I said, you have to do a truncation argument. You have to define xi tilde equal to max of b comma xi, right. So, you truncate these random variables xi when they take very large values greater than b, some b, you call it equal to b. Okay. Now, these truncated random variables will have finite variance, so the law will go through, right, and then you have to make sure that this b goes to infinity in an appropriate at an appropriate rate. Okay. So, that is where the difficulty is, it's not very conceptually very demanding, it's just messy. Okay. Actually, Grimmett has a full proof of, without any further assumptions, it has a proof. And also Terry Tau's blog has a very nice exposition on the strong law of large numbers. You know, the famous mathematician Terry Tau, his blog has a very good article blog on strong law of large numbers. Okay, you can read. Okay, I'll stop here.